John Sheldon makes his way up there, would you all also recognize State Senator Don Huffine, who's just arrived in the back. Mr. Huffine, welcome. And Mr. Sheldon. Not here? No? Okay, I guess we move on. All right, let's get to HD 113, the candidates. You know what, I got to say this, because when an incumbent shows up, it's a tremendous thing. So, I mean, Cindy Burkett and Jonathon Boos, I should say, make your way to the stage, please. Well, you know, it's, like I said, it's such a rarity. Here you go. There you go, sir. Welcome. It's nice to meet you. All right. Let us begin, shall we? And we will go with the first question. Again, the questions were prepared well ahead of time, and I'm going to call an audible here, probably somewhere toward the end of the questioning here, to put something in there that's close to my heart too. So we'll start off with Jonathon Boos. We're going to have you answer the first question. Here it is. Many state leaders have called on the federal government to stop sending Syrian refugees to Texas. Same refugees that the Obama administration has admitted to the country that they cannot vet properly. But they keep on sending them anyway. What can be done to stop the settlement of more refugees, or if they are continuing to be placed here, what can we do as a state once they're here?
Chris, thanks for your question. And this is something, as I've been knocking out on doors, one of the big concerns from District 113, the voters in our district. I'll tell you, number one, I think we have got to get behind Governor Abbott. I'm so proud that he has led on this issue to say we are going to push back on the federal government. My understanding is right now, the state doesn't really have much of a choice in this matter, and as a result, I think Ted Cruz has introduced some legislation to help remedy that. So number one, we need to press our federal legislators to make this change. Number two, we need to be willing to stand up as a state and push back on some of the federal government. Some of the things the federal government is ramming down our throat. So that means standing behind our sheriffs and our law enforcement officers and Governor Abbott to say this is not right for Texas, and if we can't vet these people, we're not going to let them come here. Then we need legislators that will go down to Austin and be willing to have a backbone and stand behind Governor Abbott and our sheriffs to protect Texans first. What can we do if they do come here? I will tell you one thing that has not happened. There's been a lot of communication to residents of the communities where these individuals are coming. So better communication to residents about who's coming, where they're staying, when they're going, etc.
Thank you very much. And you know what? And let me just expand a little bit on it, Ms. Burkett, because that has been the stock and trade of the Obama administration. Is there is no communication. We have several people infiltrating thousands of illegal immigrant children infiltrating the border, and then the Obama administration scoops them up, lets them stay here in North Texas on the taxpayer dole, and then it moves on, and then they distribute them throughout the country. We have no idea who they are, where they are, and we are told it's to protect the privacy rights of the illegal immigrants, and one would expect the Obama administration to follow suit with the Syrian refugees. Their privacy trumps our right to know. What can we do as a state?
Well, I don't think their privacy does trump our right to know. It's a big concern. We've got refugees coming in, as we're hearing across the country and in other countries. Within the Syria, the refugees, we are having adults coming in that are a terrorist threat. And so we need to know who's here. And if the Obama administration is going to be insisting upon sending them to Texas, we need to make sure that we know where they are. We need to make sure that we can keep track of them ourselves and make sure that we give our law enforcement officers the ability to do that and to check on them on a regular basis. We've got a lot of things that the Obama administration keeps shoving down our throats, and down here in Texas we have been pushing back, and that's one reason that we sometimes have a little bit of issues with our president as we try to do other situations as well. So that'd be number one. I think we need to know where they are. We need to know, I want to know how they're going to pay for it. You know, we as a state have already put a lot of money into protecting our state. We put almost $1 billion onto the border this last session to put DPS officers, 250 of them, down there to protect the border because the feds weren't doing their job. So if the feds going to put them down here, I want to know where they are, who they are. We need to set up some kind of system where we can check on them and keep track of them. Preferably, I'd like to not to have them at all. And I appreciate that our governor's pushing back. Texas Conservative Coalition put together a letter of legislators saying that we fully support the governor, and we do. And I'd like to see our Attorney General assist us in that area as well.
Okay, and a follow-up question in regards to this. The refugees, in this situation with the refugees, something we're intimately involved with up here in North Texas, this idea of Sharia courts. Beth Van Dyne has been doing wonderful work in standing up against this and taking a lot of the slings and the arrows on this. We'll go to you first, Ms. Burkett, on this one. What do you think can be done to give her and other local municipalities some ammunition to stand up to these courts, which clearly run afoul of our system of law in this country?
Well, Chris, we had several bills this last time around to address just that issue. I had actually joint authored a bill myself that said only our Constitution would govern our court system. I don't want to use Spanish law, English law. I want to use our Constitution to determine what our bills and laws should be. We did have American laws and American courts. That went through the Senate side and ended up on the House side. Unfortunately, we got it very late in session, the last day that we could actually hear bills during session. We did rush that through, and it did not come out of committee. Actually, Kenneth Sheets and Jody Lauber were very instrumental in getting it out of committee because our Republican chair was out of town that day on a family emergency, and so we had a Democrat vice chair. And they made sure, I'm going to make that, watch that light. They made sure that we got that bill out of committee and to the calendars. We made sure that it got into calendars for a vote. Unfortunately, the vote did not put it out of committee. The speaker put it back through once again, and again, it was not voted out of committee. But it's something that was very supportive of many of our legislators, especially the Republican ones, and I would love to see that happen again. As I mentioned, I did have a bill that I joint authored, and when we saw that Jeff Leach's bill was going to go through, we all got behind on that one.
Mr. Bruce, same question to you. What do you think?
Well, this is a good question to contrast between Ms. Burkett and myself, because American law for American courts, which was a no-brainer, did make it out of the state Senate. As Ms. Burkett mentioned, it died in the calendars committee. Who's the chair of the calendar committee? That would be Byron Cook. Who appoints the chairman of that committee? That would be Joe Strauss. And who voted for Joe Strauss? That would be our current state representative, Cindy Burkett. She's committed to doing so again. I'm committed to voting against Joe Strauss, whether or not he has an opponent, because we can't have common sense laws like American law from American courts coming out of our state Senate, another one of the many bills that came out of our state Senate that died in our state House that should have been passed.
Ms. Burkett, it is a criticism that conservatives do not have an ally in Joe Strauss, that he consolidates his power, and I've been very vocal about this on the radio, so it's no secret, that he consolidates his power here in the state of Texas with the help of Democrats, consideration for Democrats, and placating and accommodating Democrats. So, anything to Mr. Boos' criticism here?
Well, number one, the chairman of calendars is not Byron Cook, it's Todd Hunter. Number two, we got that bill from the Senate the very last day it could be heard in committee, and it was pushed through by the leadership in the Speaker's office so that it would be getting a vote in calendars. So your facts are a little bit different there. And then what was your question, Chris? I'm sorry.
Just about having an ally in Joe Strauss. The conservative movement here in the state of Texas sees him more of a hindrance than an ally.
You know, and there has been a lot of discussion on that. I think that one of the things our current speaker does is very upfront with you about you being able to vote your district, and I think that's very important. He is very member-driven in what we do in the House, and I think that's important as well. We've lost some really good members from the previous administration when they went home to their districts because they hadn't voted their district. Elvira Rain is a perfect example of that. So I appreciate that about the speaker. But on top of that, when you look at it, we have passed a lot of conservative legislation under the current speaker, and a lot of pro-life legislation.
Well, a lot of folks are pointing to the very conservative Senate too that has helped some of that along.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And you know, sometimes that we have bills like that pass one session in one house and not the other. It can be a very frustrating process at times. I don't argue that at all.
Mr. Boos, you want to rebuttal?
So I do apologize. It is Todd Hunter, but he was also appointed by Joe Strauss, and I would say Strauss is probably very friendly with the Democrats down there in Austin, and it's interesting that Ms. Burkett says she's allowed to vote her district. When she first voted her district, she voted against Speaker Strauss, and in the last 2 sessions, something's changed drastically, and she supported him.
Okay, let's move on to the sanctuary cities. We mentioned the border earlier. The sanctuary city, I guess the biggest one in our area would be Dallas. And I think I read a story on the air just the other day that we now have expanding, despite public outcry against this practice, we have an expansion of now 300 sanctuary cities in the United States. This is a mechanism where federal government passes down funding into these cities, and the cities then in turn make sure the illegal immigrant population gets the money. So that way the federal government can say, hey, we don't give illegals money, not us, what the cities do. What can we here in the state of Texas do to deal with our sanctuary city, what I would classify as our sanctuary city cancer? Ms. Burkett.
Thank you. I like what Governor Abbott has suggested this last time in response to Lupe Valdez, is that we will restrict any money that would be going to the cities that don't follow the laws that we have out. I think, follow the money.
Mr. Boos?
I'll note that that's exactly right. You can cut off the funding to the cities. Governor Abbott has already taken steps to do that. I will say there was a bill that would have addressed sanctuary cities in our state house that couldn't make it out of the state house this last session. It seems we've got a lot of bills that we need, and that's why you've seen a call for a special session on this issue. That was another bill, couldn't make it out of the House.
Can I comment?
Sure.
Actually, the sanctuary city bill did not come out of the Senate. It did not even get out of committee on the other side. We did pass the sanctuary city bill the previous session.
Yeah, you know what, and that actually, you guys took me right where I wanted to go. The current House leadership seemed to oppose the legislation against sanctuary cities. Mr. Strauss sent the bills to a committee chaired by Mr. Cook, who's been mentioned here a couple of times tonight. And the legislation was effectively killed in committee, as I was informed. Doesn't a vote for Speaker Strauss basically diminish our ability to fight sanctuary cities, as those in the Democrat Party who give him a lot of support, they don't want us to deal with sanctuary cities? I will go with Mr. Boos first, because I went to you the last 2 times, Mr. Burkett.
I would agree with you completely. Mr. Strauss, his power base in the House is the Democrats who elected him. As a consequence of that, he gives chairmanships and vice chairmanships of very important committees to Democrats, and that's where some of our most conservative bills go to die.
You know, Ms. Burkett, there are a lot of people in here nodding their heads, because part of the frustration that is felt in the country right now, many would rationalize the rise of Donald Trump as the ineffectiveness and the timidity of the Republican Party on the national level, something we Texans are not used to seeing here from the Republican Party. But Mr. Strauss does seem to exemplify the John McCain, Lindsey Graham, Bob Corker wing of the Republican Party, which seems to have plenty of praise for the Democrat friends and plenty of criticism for conservatives. How is it that we can continue to be effective about some of these issues that a lot of conservative voters care about, when Mr. Strauss seems to be that obstacle in the way?
Well, I want to address the sanctuary cities question, if you don't mind. We did not get a sanctuary city bill in the House this time around. It did not get out of committee on the Senate. It did not get out of committee on the Senate side at all. So let's look at maybe those committees over there and the membership over there as to why it did not get out. Now, we did have Pat Fallon file a bill the very last day that you could file a bill, and that does not have time to get to the committee process, the testimony process, to get to the floor.
All right. Mr. Boos, you have a rebuttal?
I will say, look, the bill died in the House. Not everything needs to be on the Senate to get things started, so we should have gotten it out of the House.
All right, here comes my audible, and this is going to dovetail into this conversation rather nicely. How many of y'all are happy with your property taxes? This has been something that's been on my radar screen for an awful long time. Ms. Burkett, I think it's safe to assume that a vast majority of us are very unhappy with the way the House under the leadership of Mr. Strauss handled this freight train, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, this tax freight train that is headed towards homeowners here in the great state of Texas. By any measure, the Senate did its job in proposing a rather bold agenda, and it was the House that was taking baby steps toward doing something about this, not bold in any stretch of the imagination. Where were you on how the House was handling itself? Were you more in line with the conservatives over in the Senate or with a more moderate leadership on the House side?
We passed one of the biggest tax cuts that we've had. Now, I see you smiling. What we had on each side was different views on where you want to get your taxes cut. Now, property taxes, I don't like them either. I'm a homeowner. But 40% of Texans do not own a home. So one of the things we were trying to do on the House side was to extend that through the sales tax so that everybody would benefit from that tax cut. So I think that we're in a wonderful place and wonderful state where we're arguing how to give people their money back. But I don't agree with you when you say that one was more conservative than the other. I think the one simply, same dollars, we were trying to just make sure that every Texan got to experience that tax relief.
Mr. Boos, you want a rebuttal on that one?
I'll say in the last election, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick ran on a platform of reducing property taxes because that's what the voters in Texas wanted, and the state Senate went to bat for what the voters wanted. The House had a different idea, and ultimately the Senate won out, and I would have supported that. I think there's a lot more work to be done because I think what you're going to see is a lot of municipalities, your taxing jurisdictions, are going to get around the relief that was put in place. So enjoy your tax break while it lasts, because I bet the value of your home is going to go up. And so really what we need, Chris, is we need spending caps, not arbitrarily lowering some of these other numbers that our taxing jurisdictions are going to get around.
All right. Did you have a real quick?
Well, I was just going to say, he made my point. The fact that when you do a property tax credit instead of, or relief versus a sales tax relief, it does get overplayed by the local communities that are going to increase their taxes.
Yeah,
so I just made my whole point.
I got to have you both on the show because I've got like 10,000 more questions on that one. Last question. Governor Abbott has come out in support of the Convention of the States, which is to allow good folks like yourself, and if you were able to win the day, Mr. Boos, it would be somebody like you, to rein in Washington, D.C. on our behalf. The premise being that you are more accountable to we the people, closer to we the people, and those in Washington, D.C. are, well, not. Where do you sit on the Convention of the States? Mr. Boos, we'll let you go first.
I would be in support of a Article 5 convention or Convention of the States. I know there are some concerns about it being a runaway convention. However, I think the firewall that's in place of the number of states that you would have to approve anything that would come out of it will protect from any dangerous things that would come out. And at this point, we have such a runaway federal government and a runaway Supreme Court that we absolutely need to stand up in the states and take back the power that's either been taken from us or that we've given away. And that includes not just things like Convention of the States, but interstate compacts, interposition, other things that we can do to push back on the federal government and reclaim the things that were rightly supposed to stay with states.
You know, yeah, and the whole idea behind this, and the legislators like yourself, Ms. Burkett, are meeting in Philadelphia in the summer to finalize the rules to address this whole runaway convention fear and target one issue at a time. Where do you sit on Article 5?
Actually, you just hit on what I was going to say. I did vote for the Article 5 amendment, bill that Paul Workman had up, and one of the things that we did do was put into place with that bill some rules to make sure that you don't have a runaway state. Because as I talked with Republicans and conservatives and Tea Party, there were many people for it. There were almost just as many people fearful of it for exactly that purpose. So we tried to do both to make sure that it would run smoothly.
On this one, you're right. The problem child this time around was over in the Senate, and a couple of Republicans that joined with all Democrats to oppose Article 5 coming out of the state legislature. Thank you both.
The first thing you should know about me is I'm a Christian, saved by the grace of my Lord Jesus Christ. Second thing you should know about me is I'm going to go down to Austin and be a man of character and integrity if elected. I'm not going to compromise just so I can get on a good committee or get my name on bills or go to the fancy cocktail parties with the lobbyists. We've got enough of that in Austin already. We need people that will go to Austin and be consistently conservative. Ms. Burkett is a very nice lady. And you know what? She started out conservative, but I think by any metric, she has really moved left. In fact, the Rice University survey would say between 2013 and 2015, she moved further left than any other Republican in the Republican conference. So I would just encourage you, if you're in District 113, go do your homework. It's not just one scorecard that shows we're going from A's and B's down to C's, D's, and F's. It's scorecard after scorecard after scorecard. So go do your homework. I'll be around afterwards. I would love to talk to you. If you'd like to get involved in the campaign, I'd love to have your help.
Thank you, Chris. It's been an honor to represent District 113 in Austin for the last 3 terms. And I'd like to say I feel like they've been very successful. 2011, we went in with a $27 billion shortfall in the midst of the recession. And we managed, unlike other states, to pass the budget without raising taxes and without using our rainy day fund. I also authorized an amendment that year on the budget that basically did a major defund of Planned Parenthood on the state level, to the point that the Obama administration pushed back and took away all of our funding for our women's program. Texas being Texas, we stood up and we took care of that. 2013, I had a bill that addressed mail ballot fraud. I had a bill that required group home facilities to notify patients if a registered sex offender moves into that facility. I had a bill that prohibited your homeowners associations from restricting you from flying a flag in your yard, something basic that was needed. And of course, I also co-authored HB2, the largest pro-life bill ever in this country. This last year, I passed HB 565, which removed eminent domain authority from private toll road companies. Anybody in here remember the Blackland Corridor? I stopped that. And working through the sunset process, we reduced government by consolidating 2 agencies and discontinuing over 40 duplicative boards and committees. I would like to continue to work for you down in Austin, and I'd ask for your vote. Thank you, Chris.
All right, thank you, guys. There are a lot of multi-syllabic words in that.